foreigners in South Korea to leave the country now, warning that the two nations are really on the brink of nuclear war. Heritage Foundation senior fellow Peter Brooks writing today, it's highly unlikely the missiles North Korea is mobilizing have the ability to successfully target South Korea or Japan or the United States. But he goes on to warn this, saying, quote, before you start your happy dance assuming North Korea is going to launch a missile in an open ocean test, the missile may pass over Japan. A less than fully successful flight test could result in missile debris falling on Japanese territory, causing death or destruction on the ground. He also says the U.S. isn't free and clear either, and that while the U.S. mainland may be out of missile range, Guam is within reach of a missile type that the North has moved to its east coast. Peter Brooks is our guest. Now, Peter, I had no idea you had a happy dance. So, I mean, we talk about so many serious topics. Among the scenarios that are very serious here with North Korea, you say the most dangerous one is that Kim Jong-un has delusions of grandeur. That could be. Why do you consider that the most dangerous of all scenarios?
Well, I'm really worried here that he may be on the verge of or may have delusions of grandeur. I certainly don't know. Maybe we should ask Dennis Rodman. But the fact is the regime, since he's taken over, is kind of on a roll. In other words, they had a nuclear test in December, or a long-range missile test in December that was successful. His father wasn't able to do that. They've had a third nuclear test that they're saying is a new type of weapon, a lighter weapon, maybe moving in the direction of a warhead. And they may even launch a new missile this week, maybe as early as tomorrow. And I think, that he may think that he is actually in a position to push things further than they should be pushed. Right now, we're just in a war of words.
But based on what we've seen here, is he right? He's been able to push and push and push and push over the last couple of weeks.
But once again, it's just been a war of words, and he has pushed, but he's not taken any violent action yet. And that's the concern. My concern is misperception, miscalculation that comes from their policy of belligerence, of brinksmanship, and of blackmail that could lead to a war. That's my real concern. Now, you have to be measured in responding to North Korea because you don't want to push them. Think of this, Jenna, as two kids in a playground doing a little chest thumping. The United States has, you don't really want to get to a situation where somebody throws that first punch because it could be very, very dangerous and a lot of death and destruction could come.
But those two kids that you're talking about in the playground, are they equal? Are we talking about equal superpowers here pushing each other? And we have been stepping back from not the sanctions. We have the sanctions in place. But we just recently said, you know what, we're not going to do the missile test that we planned because we don't want to provoke them. Is that the right move right now, Peter?
Yeah, I think a measured approach, a prudent approach, a practical approach makes sense. And I'll tell you why here. Now, do you really want to have that fight? North Korea would lose to the United States and South Korea. But the fact is that North Korea has the capability to kill a lot of people. In fact, there have been estimates that North Korea in a war would kill maybe 1 million people in the opening days of the war. Seoul, the capital of South Korea, which is about 10 to 20 million people in that metropolitan area, is within range of North Korean artillery, maybe 10,000 tubes of artillery, including chemical weapons. It's only 25 miles from that DMZ. A lot of people could be killed. So the question is, do you really want to have this fight while you're pushing each other?
And I'm not advocating war, but we had a former CIA operative was on our show yesterday. I know you're former CIA as well. And Mike Baker said we don't really have any good intelligence when it comes to North Korea beyond the video, really, that we see of them, test firing these missiles. So how good is our intelligence really about what potentially is to come?
Well, there's a lot we do know. I agree with Mike, and I was also Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for this part of the world in the Bush administration, so I looked at this. There's a lot of other things we need to look at, Jenna. Are they mobilizing their ground troops for an invasion? What are they doing on the ground? There's things we can glean from intelligence, satellites, from communications, other things. It is a hard target. We don't know everything, but there is things we are certainly watching day to day to see if the tensions are actually going about on the ground, or fulfilling themselves on the ground. Are the North Korean troops moving closer to the DMZ? Are there ships dispersing? There's a lot of things out there. So we have to be very, very careful here because we really don't want, you kick in that door, it's a war. You're not exactly sure what you're going to get. And like I said, I think there would be a lot of death and destruction. So we need to be cautious, and we're taking good defensive measures with missile defense, delicious irony here that the Obama administration is finally embracing missile defense, which can protect us from these North Korean missiles.
So quick final question to bring us full circle. If the Kim regime ends, however it does, would our problems be solved in North Korea?
No, not necessarily. I mean, what happens right after if there's an implosion of the regime? What does China do? Do they rush into North Korea? What does South Korea do? What does the United States do? Lots of refugees. Would there be a civil war in North Korea? A lot of bad scenarios out there, unfortunately. I mean, it would certainly, hopefully, in the long run, be good for the North Korean people that have lived under this repression for many, many years. Probably the most repressive state in the world. But the fact of the matter is this is a very complicated issue. You have to, act very cautiously because the consequences can be very dire indeed.
We're going to talk about how this is a regional story a little later on in the show, Peter, and also how potentially it sets a precedent for how we're dealing with Iran right now, which is attempting to.
Oh, absolutely. Good point.
It's a big story. So I wish we had several hours to cover it, quite frankly. And Peter, always enjoy our conversations. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jennifer, for having me.
Well, some homeowners go for alarms to scare off would-be burglars. Others choose dogs. We want to show you a guy who has a couple of crocs. Check it out. Two adult crocodiles